David Sullivan, your training ground is crap. Not my words. These are the words of Vladimír Coufal. Well, they're not really, to be honest with you. But he meant it like that. There's no doubt about it. Very much, I felt that Vladimír Coufal went in two-footed on West Ham's training ground. And I don't blame him at all. By the way, Coufal is a very, very unhappy bunny, it seems. But I do think he's enjoying himself at Hoffenheim. But he's unhappy, let's put it this way, with the way he left West Ham. He's done a big interview with The Athletic. Gio did a video about it earlier on. What really caught my attention out of everything else was what he said about the training ground. It was quite clear. He basically said you can't even compare it. I'll read exactly what he said in a bit. He said, but you can't even compare it with Hoffenheim's training ground. I hope West Ham get a good training ground one day. I mean, that's some damning stuff. And we know this as fans. We're aware that West Ham have a lack of investment. And we know that there's comparisons. We've spoken a lot about the stadium recently. But if you remember, did the video not so long ago about Bournemouth's training ground. It's not that we look at Bournemouth and we look at Hoffenheim as exceptions to the rule and they've just got something brilliant and we've got something normal and bog standard. No, ours is terrible. Ours has been described as League One level. And I was lucky enough, I've been lucky enough to go to the West Ham training grounds probably about 8 or 9 years ago now. And I was lucky because I was a West Ham fan. It's like a dream come true to go and watch the players train. And that was brilliant. And I'll always be grateful for that, that's for sure. But I think it's the old Ford social club, isn't it? It's based in the building of an old social club. This is not a state-of-the-art building at all. There's lots of porter cabins there. It's a bit crap, if the truth be known. And we'll get to what Coufal's precise wording on it is. But this should be highly embarrassing for West Ham. It should be highly embarrassing for David Sullivan. It should be really embarrassing for Karen Brady because do you remember when they put out that statement? There'd been a vote of no confidence and then we believe it was Karen Brady, but if not, it was certainly somebody who wrote it on Karen Brady's behalf, which was, we're hurting as much as you are. We understand. We're ambitious. We've got big promises. They made big promises. We've got big ideas. We've got big plans for the future with Carl McCauley and Graham Potter leading recruitment. And I think it was 3 weeks afterwards they sacked the pair of them, right? But anyway. And then they tried to defend the training ground. Nobody complained about the training ground when we were winning. That's not true. That's not true. You'll also hear, by the way, that people often say, no one complains about the training ground. No one complains about the London Stadium when West Ham are winning. I'm telling you now, I've got an email in my inbox from the Burnley game with someone complaining that they couldn't get out the bloody ground. I'm telling you now, right, they couldn't get to the station. People still complain. And people, even when we're winning, people are complaining about the training ground because it's just not good enough. But it's really interesting to hear a player say it, to hear a player come out and say, your training ground is just substandard. But I'll talk a little bit more about it. Michael Levy Jr., who usually does the videos here with me, he lives in Tenerife. He's flying over to the UK. He's a singer, right? He's got a gig. Well, he's got a few gigs. 2 of them are sold out. I'm going to a gig in Loughton next Friday. It's turkey tinsel and singing. And basically he's doing a show. He's doing a singing show, Motown, soul music, that kind of stuff. Very, very good singer indeed. Basically, the tickets are available now. I'll put them in the link in the description below. I'm going. I'm taking the missus. Basically, you get a Christmas dinner, all the trimmings, all the stuff, and you get an evening's worth of entertainment as well. So that's in Loughton. I'll be there next Friday. He would certainly love it if you would come and join us for that. Come and join us. Come and say hello. Come and have a bite to eat. Come and have your pigs in blankets and a beer or whatever the case may be. And come and enjoy yourself and lend a bit of support to Michael. I know he'd really, really appreciate it. That's Loughton that's next Friday. I'll see you there, hopefully. Now, what Coufal said, let's get to that before we dig too further deep into it. So, he said, we have an unbelievable training ground at Hoffenheim. It's not even possible to compare it to West Ham. I wish they have a training ground like this one day. They need and deserve it. So this is what I'm saying. He's being kind. He loves West Ham. We know he loves West Ham. We'll get to a bit more of that later on. He's not in any way being nasty about it. But it's bad. It's bad because our owners have done the bare minimum just to get by at West Ham. It's why I'm convinced they won't be here much longer, because if they really, you can be judged by your actions. If what they wanted to do was build the best football club possible, they'd have done this stuff. This was all about getting the stadium, and it was all about flipping it. That was all it was. It was all about, I think when Gold and Sullivan first bought their shares, they spent £50 million on the shares. They've not put a lot of their own money in, right? They put loans in, and they gave loans to West Ham, but with interest. I think they put some money in during COVID. But I think looking at it, they bought the initial shares for 50 million. Maybe they've spent 100 million on all the shares. I don't know. They're probably going to look to sell it for something like $1 billion. This was always the idea, right? This was always the idea. Now, if it wasn't, and what you wanted to do was actually make it a brilliant club, you'd have done the training ground. You'd have done, but they do the bare minimum. And I guess it's not embarrassing for us because we don't go to the training ground. But for the players, and not everyone's going to join West Ham and absolutely love West Ham and leave and want what's best for West Ham. But I think it's fair to say Coufal is one of them. He loved it here. He didn't want to leave. Well, he did for a bit last 12 months ago. He did want to leave and go to Fulham, to be fair, and he was annoyed that West Ham didn't let him leave on transfer deadline day. But that was only because he knew he wasn't gonna get a new contract. They knew that West Ham wanted him out anyway. So he was saying, like, if you're going to let me go, just let me go now. I'll move to Fulham. He wanted to do that because his son was in the academy, and he wanted to stay in London. Do you remember he did quite a frank interview and was very forthright in what he wanted, really, which he's always been that way. He's always been honest, Coufal. He is, I think, not in terms of the team so much, because I think Wan-Bissaka's a better player, but in terms of the intensity, in terms of some of the things we've seen, particularly before Nuno come in, the lack of fight, the lack of spirit, he had tons of that. He had it in abundance. He was always committed to West Ham. Brilliant value as a signing, and he always seemed to get it. You heard it from day one, didn't you? David Moyes used to say, these Czech boys, they're in, they do extra training, they come in on their day off, and you would hear all these stories. But for him to go away to Hoffenheim, and it's to Hoffenheim, not Bayern Munich, but for him to go to Hoffenheim and say, this is, you can't. We've all done that, where someone says, "Oh, is this like this?" and you say, "Well, you can't compare it. It doesn't matter if it's food, a TV show, or anything else. You couldn't remotely compare that to that." The reason you say that, the reason you use that language, is because the one thing that you can't compare it to is just so much better. That's an unfair comparison, right? It's an unfair comparison. It's like comparing a scooter to a Range Rover. You wouldn't even compare the two. And I think this is what's going on here. And it's not just them. I mean, anyone and everyone has got a better training ground than West Ham. Hoffenheim, but most of the Bundesliga have a better training ground than West Ham. Bournemouth, it's not just Bournemouth. Brighton have. Leicester City have. Leicester City have got £150 million. West Ham have got a mound for them. And they've got £150 million training complex there. There's just loads of them. Not a million miles. Not a million. Well, funny enough, Reading's is not a million miles from here. They did have it sort of near, it was, the old one was in Arborfield, and then they moved to, it's actually not far from the stadium now. It's just, this is Reading. It's so much better than West Ham's. Obviously Cobham is, but that's Chelsea. We know that's brilliant. The Spurs one, everyone's is better than West Ham's, because they don't care. They just want to do the bare minimum. By the way, I should probably say, so one of the other things that Coufal said, and this obviously if you haven't heard Gio's video, you maybe won't know this, but most of you do know this. He was very upset by the way that his exit from West Ham was handled. Basically, it was Graham Potter that told him, "You're not going to get a new deal." And I think Graham Potter said, and I am paraphrasing here, but I don't think I'm a million miles away from it being accurate. Graham Potter said to him, basically, the owners don't want to keep you. I think that's pretty much what happened. And that's, I think he said that the conversation only took 30 seconds. And you would expect a little bit more than that, wouldn't you? Because he has been a good servant, a really, really good servant. But do you know what I thought about that? Well, if you're not going to give someone like Aaron Cresswell a testimonial, we're probably not going to wave goodbye to Vladimír Coufal in a particularly classy way. I'm quite sure that would have been very, very different under David Moyes. In fact, I'm quite sure it would have been very different under under Nuno. Now, even though Nuno probably hadn't, he hadn't managed him that much. I mean, just the worse. The more you hear about Graham Potter, the worse it gets. And by the way, that is all on the ownership. I can't believe they get away with this stuff scot-free. I don't know how many times I've said it. Not scot-free, but we will look back. History will not reflect kindly on the appointments of Julen Lopetegui and Graham Potter. And that's them. It's them that's done it.